everybody. Welcome back to the Business and Bliss podcast. I am your host, Lisa Kay, here with my amazing co-host, Jennifer Conkey. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Sometimes I want to introduce you as my sidekick, so maybe we'll try that sometime.
Yeah, I'll be a sidekick. That's fine.
All right. Well, we have an amazing guest here today. Everyone, welcome Jess Gibson. Jess, we are super excited to have you. I loved our conversation that we had on the phone. And I'm so excited for you to tell our listeners about your book. Just so much great information to share. You are a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome. And without further ado, Jess, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just to introduce yourself to our listeners, tell us a little bit more about you, and then we're going to go ahead and dive in.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I was a teacher, middle school, high school, and for about 11 years, and then a professor of psychology. I trained a bunch of therapists and wrote several books, and I just realized that I didn't want to grade any more dissertations. And that when I was working with people, training these therapists, I trained hundreds of therapists, that the model for what we do when we treat people and their problems and their trauma and their pain is really ridiculous. Instead of taking people on the journey that they're in and realizing where they're really at and acknowledging that, hey, we're just all in our own movie right now. We're writing our own stories. Like, if you're going to write yourself a story, write yourself a damn good one. Yeah. Because we make up all these meaning for, we make up all the meaning for the things that we have in our lives anyway. So I started to go on a different path, and I created something called strategic therapy. And halfway through that, which strategic therapy is just a rapid way of working with problems, like in 4 to 6 weeks, instead of ongoing therapy for the rest of your life or many years at a time, just waiting for some insight to bubble up. Let's screw that. Let's get straight to the point. Let's redefine how we see problems and what we do and how we feel about them. And then this book popped out of me, like they do sometimes, right? It's called The Manifestation Protocol. And I realized at the base level of things, if we don't already appreciate all the things that have happened to us in our life, we don't get to move on to the next level of creation.
Yeah.
And so, and I was going through personal things. So this was a personal adventure for me as well. I have an extremely narcissistic ex-wife who's pretty much done everything she can to destroy the relationship between my daughter and I, who's now 10, and we have a really close relationship. So I'm like, okay, how do I personally figure out a way to be grateful for all the shit that's filtering into my life right now?
Yes, amen.
And how do I get to a point where I can look at this as a tool and a lesson and a leverage point to jump to the next level? And at first it was really difficult. I was like, what can I appreciate about this person that I absolutely hate? I'm like, I was struggling, and I'm like, I appreciate that she has really nice hair. I mean, you got to start at the baseline level things, right? So anyway, this book ended up coming out. It was in 3 parts. There's a meditation part, because you got to get in touch with the universe and shut your mind off. Then you got to get into the appreciation phase. And then you got to really get into the creation phases, where you get to ask the universe for things and for questions and information. It came out, people started reading it, and it kind of took off.
That's so cool.
Kind of took off.
Yeah, just kind of took off. Yeah.
Kind of took
I'm
off.
over here trying to learn it. How do I get this? How do I do it? How can I be cool? Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have a 10-year-old daughter?
I do. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I have a almost 17-year-old daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, that's a big spread.
It is a big spread, and they're by 2 different, practice wives, I like to say.
Practice wives?
Yeah. So that I could be ready. For
what's next.
Right. So, come on. You got to go through relationships and failures in life and do it as quickly as you possibly can, or you're not going to get to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, you got to win or learn, right?
Right.
And if you don't learn from the divorce, then, yeah.
No.
So I get it. That makes sense. That's cool.
So, yeah.
So now that you have this book and you've had this practice and you've been able to help people, like, what are you doing now with the book? What are you doing all this travel? Like, where are you going? What are you doing? How are you helping?
So I've been working on, it's interesting. When things come to you, when you put yourself in the right place, right? Energetically, we know that we're all made up of matter and energy. And the only way to really change mental states is to change the physical place that we put our vibrations in on a daily basis. And of course, that's related to diet, and that's related to exercise and attitude and all that stuff that we already know. But it's also related to how we individually deal with trauma and pain in our stories. And so when I wrote this book, what ended up happening is, I don't know if there was some tectonic shift in the universe for me anyway, is that I started to get phone calls. And the very first phone call I got was from a 25-year-old girl who had just been raped. And she somehow found, I hadn't been doing a lot of advertising. She somehow found a flyer that I had stuck up around town and did a little pull-off tab and called me, and she was bawling, and she said, "Are you the therapist that makes change happen?" And I said, yes. I didn't know anything. It's just this girl on the other end crying. And she's like, "Do you have any time today?" And I said, "Please tell me what's going on." She told me. I showed up over there about an hour later. Fortunately, I was free. There was cops there. So we sat down, and this girl is in complete and utter total breakdown. She was raped by her best friend a year ago, and she had just gotten brave enough to come to terms with it. And so, you're dealing with crisis situations like this. How do you deal with it? And so the very first thing I had to do is check her emotional range, right, to find out. So even though this sounds like the worst possible thing you could do in a situation that's this traumatic, I made her laugh in the middle of her misery. I wanted to know that I could take her out of that, because everybody has an emotional range, right? Even if we are desperately hurt and in pain, there is something that we can do to appreciate and laugh in all situations. So I appreciated her world first, understood where she was coming, built rapport as quickly as I possibly could, and then I made her laugh. And then we laughed hysterically together. And then the cops were all laughing. Okay, and then once we got that baseline down, like, okay, we're all humans here. This is a really shitty situation, but we have the ability to change the way we feel about it. Just that small little demo to her was enough to give her hope that she could take it in a different level. So I've only worked with her 3 times. She's got one more session and then we're done, because I usually only work with people 4 to 6 times. But that has cascaded this whole, now I've gotten 4 or 5 other clients from her, that have to do with abuse or trauma or like narcissistic manipulation and relationships. And so things have really picked up after that. But it really comes down to, how do you appreciate all the situations in your life that you want to hate and you want to resent?
Yeah, that's a crazy story. Yeah. Okay. I mean, curious, how did you get her to laugh?
So I don't know. I told some stupid joke, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but
right.
Oftentimes we call them pattern interrupts, like in neurolinguistic programming. I'm sure you're familiar. Right at the worst possible moment, you say the most random, asinine, idiotic thing, and it catches that one moment of confusion. And in that one moment of confusion, you can insert pretty much anything and the brain will actually hear it. And then because the brain's confused, it doesn't know how to deal with it. Usually it goes into laughter, because that's the only way you can deal with a chaotic situation at that point, right?
Right.
I don't remember the exact thing I said.
That's so cool. Pattern interrupting is cool.
It reminds me when you asked me if I can smell popcorn.
Yeah.
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 Like, what?
Did I say that to you?
No, I did.
Oh, you
I
did
when I was doing a session with her. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
Popcorn. Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't.
No, I don't smell popcorn. Oh, okay, cool. Do you smell rusty nails? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
very cool. So, it's interesting what you're saying. It goes back to this phrase that keeps coming up for me, which is the journey is the destination. Right. So it's never that we arrive at this place of like complete peace and forever until the end of time. Like, there's always going to be that next obstacle, that next challenge that, kind of like what you said, like it gives you another opportunity to see just how much your soul has evolved at that point. Like, how are you going to deal with this? Jen and I went through, or I guess we kind of went through a business situation together, where someone did something negative to us, and you know, it's kind of like in that situation in the past, I would have like flipped out and cried and freaked out. And, you know, it's kind of like before I even picked up the phone to talk to her about it, I was like, I already forgive you.
Right.
Like, regardless of why you did it or what happened, or I already forgive you. And that was like, wow, I actually had, like, I've grown. And so, you know, then the universe is like, well, no, wait, like, let's just see how much you've grown. How about this?
Right.
So it's interesting that of what you're talking about with, you know, this girl's personal trauma, with your, you know, obstacles and trauma that you've even worked through. It's, you know, constantly evolving our soul, which in theory, I believe is what we all signed up for when we incarnated on this planet, right? Is we signed up for this boot camp to evolve our soul. So it's really beautiful work that you're doing to help people change the way they look at things, right? Wayne Dyer, change the way that you look at things, and the things you look at change,
Right.
which is beautiful. So.
Yeah, and I think I take a lot of this. So my background is I thought I was going to be an archaeologist, Indiana Jones. I'll just be honest. I thought I was going to be Indiana Jones when I was a kid. So I got my bachelor's in Meso-American archaeology, and then I studied religion and archaeology, and then got my master's in educational and developmental psychology and a PhD in psychology and teaching credential. I taught science. So I kind of always combine this like religious aspect with the scientific aspect, and then studied quantum psychology and quantum physics, which I know is above like most people's normal realm, but I'm a dork. And in doing that,
Or
what?
I said, or you're just in tune.
Maybe. But in doing that, I think I put it all into a structure following Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell, of course, is famously known for, you know, understanding the monomyth and the way that human beings tell stories and how that's embedded into our DNA. And he studied the religious texts from basically every culture in the world that still exists, and found the underlying archetypal structures that exist. And then Carl Jung really looked at those archetypal structures and how they fit into the collective unconscious. And I know this is a little bit esoteric right now, but the point is this: human beings have structures that are built into their DNA to understand life, understand the patterns that they create in their brains to process information and understand what reality is and what reality isn't. Those structures are created in ourselves. So like kids babies don't get born into the world with structures. They get them developed. They got potentiality and they get them developed. Then by the time you're about in your 20s, you know, pretty much you've seen everything you're going to see in life. And now you have this structure for what the world really is. However, you didn't really get to choose it. It's kind of chosen for you.
Yeah.
And we walk around believing that that is the truth and reality, and that's what we are, and that's what our identity is, and that's what we're capable of, right? But in reality, that's a bunch of bullshit. Because at any moment, you could go back and change a memory or change a value system or change a belief system and have a totally different experience. And so the way that I found is the most effective to do that is by looking at the way that people tell the stories of their lives. And who does not want to, nobody wants to go to therapy, right? But who wants to go on an adventure?
Yeah.
Like if we're all our own heroes in our own stories, and we are following the 3-structure act that all movies do and all books do, right? Where at the beginning, act 1, you know, the hero is presented with a problem and doesn't want to leave their current situation and resist the adventure. And they don't go, and all of a sudden they're forced into it. Then they go into this new world where maybe they meet a mentor, they get some magic power, or they come up, they have to face these challenges, right? We're all living in that all the time, just like what you were saying, right? We're living in it all the time. And then finally they have to have some final battle. They overcome this thing, and then they're supposed to take that knowledge and that gift that they just learned and give it back to people, to bring other people up with them, right? Because that's the real purpose in the world, is to bring people up, is to wake them up.
Yeah.
That's where people get joy from.
Yeah.
So the next book that I'm almost finished with, and which I want to turn into a training for other people as well, it's called The Journey Within. I think you even said those words, because at the end of the day,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps. Yes, I resonate with that completely. The journey within. That's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
So tell us about, within your book, The Manifestation Protocol, tell us, I think we talked about this a little bit on our pre-screen, but what could you share with us today for our listeners, for someone listening who is in a dark place or ready to flip the script, ready to experience a better life? Like, where can they start? What are some tactics you could talk to us about? Like, where's a place to start? What is something that somebody could apply today?
Okay, tangibles. Perfect.
Yeah.
I love strategy and tangibles.
Yeah.
So the first thing is this. Nobody can make any decisions when they're in a chaotic state of mind, right? So we've all been gifted a strategy for relaxation, and many people forget about it. Now, I call it I call it meditation, but it doesn't have to be that, and it certainly doesn't have to be sit with your legs crossed and your fingers in a and om. It can be dance for people. It can be music for people. It can be walking. It can be running. I've been meditating while I've been running before, right? You just get into that place where nothing else exists except for maybe your breath and emptiness. The very first part when anybody's freaked out or in a dark place is to get out of your body. Because the reality of the situation is we are just bio bodysuits with a consciousness that's waiting to tell us where we're supposed to go. When we deny that is when we feel the most chaos in life. When we shut our minds off, we let our spirit or our soul or whatever interior energy you want to call it bubble up, it takes over and we get into calm and peace. So the very first strategy has to be, where do you feel the most meditative? I don't know, is it playing piano? Is it taking a walk by yourself? I don't recommend laying down on a bed meditating because that's called nap time. But, sitting calm, I usually say to myself, and in the book it gives some strategies. Sometimes I have a hard time shutting off my brain. So I have something that I'm very connected to. It's my grandmother's old Navajo blanket, and we were best friends. And when she died, she gave it to me. And so I sit it on my front lawn, and I just sit on it however I feel comfortable at the time. And I say to myself, my name is Jess Wagner Gibson, and I am nothing because I'm everything. My name is Jess Wagner Gibson, and I'm everything because I'm nothing. And I kind of just keep going through that loop for a little while until my brain's like, these don't make any sense. And it stops trying to answer questions. And then sometimes my eyes are closed, sometimes they're open. And I just try to get into a peace breathing place. Once I'm there where I feel that I'm comfortable enough in that place where I'm calmed down, I don't have random thoughts or mostly, penetrating my brain, then I try to move into the appreciation phase. And this is the hardest part of the manifestation protocol. And this is the hardest part, I think, for most people's life in general. We love the surprises. We love surprises that we expect. And the ones that we don't expect, we call problems. But they're all surprises, right?
Yeah.
So we don't get to differentiate because the universe doesn't know the difference. It's just like, here's some shit to do with. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad.
I hit a problem. I'm going to say, well, that's a surprise. I'm going to use that. Okay.
Oh, and here's the other thing I always use. This is the best line I've ever known because it always works in every situation. Anytime something happens to you that you did not expect or that pisses you off or hurts you in any way, you can always say this. That's interesting. Because it puts you in the observer perspective instead of in the reactive perspective. You're just like, okay, that's interesting. And you're never wrong.
That's never wrong.
True.
But anyway, getting back to the appreciation part, I would not recommend picking the hardest things in your life to appreciate right away. I would appreciate the things that you genuinely do appreciate. I appreciate this. And I go through and say, I'm so grateful for this situation because, and you always have to have a because, not just, I'm grateful, I'm grateful, I'm grateful. Anybody can be grateful. The universe needs to know why. Why are you grateful for it? What did it teach you? It's trying to move you on. And so there has to be a reason that you're grateful for, and you have to state that. So as you go through this, it gets easier and easier, and then you can choose the hardest, the more difficult, challenging things. And the goal would ultimately be, if you want to solve all your own pain, and you want to solve your own anxiety issues and depression, then you need to start thinking those things that you revolt against, like your depression. Like, this is a really hard concept. I am so grateful for my depression because it has taught me what? The insight that it takes for you to come upon what is the thing that it's trying to teach you in the first place.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
It totally makes sense.
And the emotion that it takes to love that thing is a shift from fear, right? Which is huge.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, the universe doesn't understand good and bad or evil. It doesn't have an emotionality attached to it. It has frequency, and that's it. And in the book, I talk a little bit about like Einstein's light, and I try to break it down to a small thing. But energy and matter are the same thing, so there's no difference. The universe has no idea. It just reflects what frequencies you put out into the universe. So if you're constantly vibrating at a depressive level, then it just goes, oh, let me match this with your level. So here are more things for you to be depressed about, right? So in order to release that, you have to appreciate it, because appreciation always takes things to a higher frequency. And when you're at the higher frequency, then you're no longer resisting the lesson that that the universe is trying to get you to learn. Then it provides you with another opportunity that's at a higher frequency.
So Jess, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen the experiment where it's two tuning forks, one tuning fork, and the other fork starts vibrating at the same tone. So what would you say for people who are around trying to have a high vibration, but they're encountering negative vibration? There's a really loud bird behind you. Sorry, not sure if anyone.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I thought my point is, when you're bombarded with other negative emotions or other negative lower vibrations, think of that like tuning fork concept, right? So
yeah, we call that, and actually that's funny that you brought up that metaphor, because I have that's exactly in my book. So I play guitar and piano, and this is called the law of resonance. So like frequencies always vibrate together, right? So what happens is, if I play a note on my guitar, let's say I play an A, and I'm not even touching my piano. On my piano, the A note will automatically vibrate and hum without me having to touch it, because the vibrations will travel through the air, and it will resonate at the same frequency, and then it'll vibrate the piano. And if I do the piano, my guitar will vibrate just the same way. This is the way that the universe operates. It's not even difficult to understand, because we can see it everywhere we go. So you're absolutely correct. That's the same way for emotional vibrations.
So what do you do about that?
That's where appreciation comes in, because appreciation and gratitude are the only two emotions. Okay, so let's look at it like this. If you looked at a scale up and down of the vibratory frequencies, and now we're getting a little technical, talking megahertz and things like that. And you can Google these things, and I don't have them memorized, but like obviously hate, despair, loneliness are way down on the list, right? And then you get to joy, appreciation, love, creativity. Those are going to be much higher on the frequency.
Yeah, if you just Google spectrum. Emotional guidance scale.
Yeah.
Esther Abraham Hicks has one out there. I was trying to find a picture of it, but yeah, we get you.
So, I mean, it should be common knowledge. And I think people okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I think people generally understand that, this is true, but they just don't apply it. And you can't apply it sometimes or one time. It has to be a daily ritual, just like everything else, right? You wake up in the morning. Yeah, like a blessing. And you wake up in the morning and you I try to find the worst things that have happened to me the day before, or that are still lingering in my heart, that hold me, that are heavy, because everybody has that. No one's perfect. And then I try to go and appreciate those things in ways that I would think to myself, if I told somebody else, they would say, you're crazy. Why would you appreciate that? I'm like, well, because I don't want it hanging on my energy spectrum. I want that off. I'm not going to walk around holding on to this crap. That's for other people, right? Just because people give you energetic vibrations that don't match what you want doesn't mean you have to hang on to them.
Mm-hmm.
But we get anchored into identity on that. It becomes an identity because our emotional system, we're used to patterns. And when we get those patterns anchored in, the brain just wants to speed up efficiency. So it's like, oh, depression, I recognize that. Let's do that again. That's normal for me, even though it's not.
Yeah, it's those damn neural pathways.
Yep. It's all about the interrupting the neural pathways.
So this is all awesome. What do you do for fun?
Oh, that's funny. So what do I do for fun? I live in Steamboat Springs. So I snowboard, I ski, I river raft, I mountain bike. I'm outside. The more time I can spend outside, the better. I think there's a deep rooted soul, you know, I don't like to go to the gym and I don't like to work out, but I will go play outside all day long.
That's cool. You're like a nature boy connected to the earth. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a nature boy.
Birds and dogs are chirping and barking behind you. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, you know, this is a funny situation. I'm at my parents' house staying, but she's had some electrical guy come over at the last second, and she's like, "Oh, there's no internet," and I'm like, "Okay." She's freaking out. I'm like, "Mom, it's fine. I'll just go outside someplace. It's not a big deal." So
that's cool. Just you're modeling the go with the flow energy. I like it.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Resisting things doesn't work. I don't know if you've ever tried to run in a pool before.
Oh, yeah, from my dad.
You don't
playing Jaws.
Yeah. You don't go any faster than if you walk.
Right. So Jess, if anybody wanted to reach out to you, how do they find you? Like, how do we get a hold of you if we want to interact with you and have you help us?
Yeah, that would be great. You can go to the website. It's www.evolvedlife.co, as in Colorado. There's information there. I also have a free download of the book for your listeners today. If they would like to download the book for free, I'm happy to send that your way. And the link to that would be www.evolvedlife.co/the-manifestation-protocol.
What? Okay. Doing it right now.
Writing it down for the show notes.
I'm like, evolved life. Tell me again.
.co.
life.co/the-manifestation-protocol.
You guys, let me just say, I actually started on this book, but also hashtag I have a 1 and a 3-year-old, so I've started on like about 6 books. But anyway, this one definitely is one that I go back to. It is absolutely incredible. Highly recommend it. And the fact that he's giving away a copy for free to our listeners is a beautiful gift. And I hope you guys take advantage of that to change your life. Jess, that's incredibly generous of you.
That's really awesome.
It's more important to get things out to people. There's other things, there's other ways to make money, but I really think that this is like an underlying truth that people should have. And I wrote the book. It's only 50 pages. It's not a long book. I have a tome coming out, but that's for other people. But most people don't read that anymore, right? We read Twitter feeds and we read Facebook posts. So this is a book that anybody can get through in a day or a couple days, no problem.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I agree. I did my ebook for free as well. Same thing. It's like about serving. So completely agree with you.
Yes. Well, Jess, it's been awesome talking to you. I really appreciate your time. I know Lisa.
Oh, thank you. This has been fantastic.
And any final words of wisdom or inspiration?
The only thing I would say is this. Look, we live in power structures and paradigms that control the way that we think about the situations. And really what life is about living is about waking up and being you, because everybody else is already taken. And I know everybody said that, but the reality of the situation is don't do anything you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's great advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah. No obligations. Yeah. Do what feels good to you. Do what feels like a good vibe to you.
Yeah, your soul's already...
You're on the right path.
Yeah, your soul's already trying to tell you what it is, so just shut up and listen.
I love it. Shut up and listen.
Awesome.
Right?
This has been so great.
Right
Thank
on.
you so much for having me on. I've appreciated it very
All
much.
right.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful
All right,
flight.
take care.
Bye.